Well, it looked like you were, picking fights with CM Punk on Twitter. What's up with that?
I wasn't picking a fight. I was responding. Punk had some very edgy comments that I'm assuming were directed to me because they were in response to something that you and I said. Evidently, he got a little case of the ass rash and decided to lash out on social media. And I love that shit. I love to counter punch. Sometimes I don't really wake up until I've been hit really hard. But, he threw a punch on social media, and I thought, well, this will be fun. I responded and pointed out that, this was a guy who came out and said that, him coming to, I'm paraphrasing it now, not quoting it. I quoted it on my tweet, so I'll let that stand. But I basically say, for a guy that thinks he's a bigger deal than Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, coming to WCW or Randy Savage, so far he's fallen flat on his face. I didn't make anything up. I took his quote and I posted it and said, how's that working out? Which it isn't, obviously. The guy's probably, in terms of a return on investment, this guy has to be the biggest financial flop in the history of wrestling.
Eric, that's not true. You're only taking one metric and talking about ratings. You're not talking about all the merch and all the tickets and all the swag. And there's more to life than just that TV rating, dude. Come on now, that.
Of course there is. But how many millions of dollars in net profit and T-shirt sales is he doing? Nobody knows. We're responding to comments that are made but are not backed up. Somebody could show me, what kind of return on his investment, then I'll eat my words, and I'm happy to do that. I'm wrong a lot, and I'm not always right. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So far, all we get is, he's selling so much merchandise. Well, how much is so much?
But Eric,
by the way, once the initial excitement of anybody, not just CM Punk, but anybody, you bring somebody in, you launch a new T-shirt, you launch new merchandise, and you get a big hit, and then it just kind of levels out until you come up with something new. And if you're really over, then you can, continue to come up with new merchandise and fill the tank. But I don't know that that's true. In the context of the conversations that we've had on this show, which is what kind of was the catalyst for Punk's response on social media, we're talking about television ratings. We're talking about impact. We weren't talking about the broader spectrum of revenue opportunities. And in terms of television, within the context of television, which is what we were talking about, and I'm asking the question, unlike Dave Meltzer, I'm not saying, he certainly hasn't had any impact on advertising. Only Turner Broadcasting would know that. Nobody in the AEW would know that because the AEW doesn't sell their own advertising. Turner does. But in terms of his context, in terms of the context into, Punk comparing himself to Randy Savage and Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and the impact that they had on WCW versus Punk coming out and saying he's a bigger deal than that. Again, it was a comparison to WCW. And I'm only talking about, again, ratings. In terms of ratings, he's fallen flat on his face. He came out to a 1.129, I think, or 1.17 million people came out to see his debut on Friday night on Rampage. It's down to around 400, 500. Punk's premiere or debut on Dynamite, did like 1.29 million people. They came, they saw, no big deal, they left. Now they're hovering around that 900,000, which they've been doing for, I don't know, a year and a half. So when Punk comes out and says he's a bigger deal than Scott Hall and Kevin Nash coming to WCW, well, that created a paradigm shift in terms of people watching wrestling, whereas Punk has created absolutely nothing. Now you throw in, but he's selling a lot of money in T-shirt sales. Number one, you and I know how much money Punk is making, but I doubt.
Well, hang on now. We don't know. No. People have said, we think, but that's the boys talking, right? We've never seen the financials is what I've never seen.
We haven't. And that's a very good point. I stand corrected. If someone's going to say to me, no, he's been a great investment because, he's sold this much, he's created this much revenue in merchandise sales, then that's a valid point. That is a very valid point, and I would be the first one to acknowledge it. And to your point about me being Dave Meltzer, To a degree, yes. But keep in mind, I'm responding. I'm not out there publishing anti-CM Punk stuff every week, trying to sell this podcast. Bad return on investment. Clearly, from a television perspective, no one can argue that. Not you, not Tony, not anybody.
But Eric, though, I mean, here's the thing. You got to appreciate the dude's going to be a money printer on action figures and video games. So I know that
you say, do you know that? Or do you hope that?
Well, I know that he set the all-time pro wrestling tees record in the first 24 hours. And that site has made a lot of guys in the business, a handful millionaires. And he broke the all-time record in 24 hours. I mean, that's not an accident.
No, that's impressive as hell.
Yes.
By the way.
There's a lot of criticism online that says, man, after they've brought you in all these times, you're going to pop off. Like you had no problem taking the payday and yada, yada, yada. And you had maybe one of the greatest tweets in the history of Twitter. I don't mind burning bridges. I know how to swim. You know, on the one hand, you and I talk sometimes and we're pulling for Tony and AEW, and I like the product. And then there's other times where you're just like dunking on it and it's hard for folks to reconcile. Can you bring some clarity to that?
My feelings about AEW and Tony Khan, my personal feelings have not changed.
Right.
From the first time I went there, from the first interview that I did with Tony Khan that you set up, helping him to promote an event. My personal feelings haven't changed. What I react to professionally, which comes off as dunking on them, is reacting to statements. The first one was when Tony Khan came out and said, if Ted Turner knew half as much about booking as I do, WCW would still be around. It still pisses me off. It still does. It's totally disrespectful. Here's Tony Khan living his childhood dream with his daddy's money. Nothing wrong with that. Let's be honest about it.
Well, come on now. This is just mean-spirited. I don't get where this is coming from. What did he say that wasn't true, though? Ted Turner never booked wrestling. He made an investment.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And Tony has no idea what kind of booker Ted Turner would have been. The point that I'm making is to have a show on a network that's called Turner Network Television and suggest that the reason it's no longer on Turner and WCW is not around is because Ted Turner didn't know anything about wrestling, I find to be extremely disrespectful. And Ted Turner, in my opinion, is one of the last of the great media entrepreneurs. And for Tony Khan to publicly state that the reason WCW isn't around is because Ted Turner didn't know as much as Tony Khan does about wrestling, I find that just to be so offensive and disrespectful. That's what I reacted to first. That was last fall, I think.
Tony was trying to explain that he has more passion for professional wrestling than Ted Turner does. How could you argue that's not the case?
And I would disagree with that. How would he know that?
Because he goes to every single TV taping. Like, he's so entrenched in the day-to-day operations of AEW. Ted Turner was not. That's just a fact.
Those are two separate things. Ted Turner built, if you read anything at all about Ted Turner and how he started TBS and what his strategy was and why he felt wrestling was so important. But he was surrounded by people at the executive level who didn't want wrestling on TBS at all. And I'm talking about early on, like when it first launched. But Ted was so passionate about the professional wrestling industry and what it could do for Turner Broadcasting that he told them all to go stuff it. He stuck with it. Is that not passion? And by the way, I would venture to say Tony Khan's booking knowledge is up for debate right now.
Oh, well, Eric, this is a version of you that is, you are Mr. Positive. When I call you on the phone, how you doing, man? Oh, fantastic, Conrad. I'm just so grateful.
I am positive and I am grateful. It doesn't mean that I don't have an opinion. And my opinion is not, I don't want to see AEW fail. We're talking about reality here. I want AEW to succeed. I want to eat my words. I want people to laugh at some of my tweets 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Hell, I want to laugh at them. I didn't react to a lot of the stuff Tony was saying because I was in that spot, and you say things and you're trying to stir people up and you're trying to get attention for your product. I get all that. And I was cool with it. I didn't respond negatively to Tony's incessant comparisons, to WCW, and well, we're just not going to make the same mistakes WCW made. Well, okay, dude.
I totally disagree. I didn't see it as him dunking on him at all. I thought,
well, that's because you didn't know Ted. You didn't work for Ted. You weren't there.
It's also because you don't know Tony.
True.
I don't know. You're exactly right. I don't know Ted Turner, but I can't imagine when Ted Turner was a little kid, he was fantasy booking wrestling, but Tony Khan was like, this is a guy who's made such a major investment in wrestling that you would sort of want to smack him around on the show is just weird.
Let's go back to CM Punk's, opening promo. GP had to bury Hulk Hogan to try to get himself over. Why? If you're that good, quit comparing yourself to other people and suggesting that you are more valuable or more important, or in Punk's exact words, and I quote, a bigger deal.
You got to appreciate Tony's in an unwinnable position on there because everybody draws the natural comparison to WCW for two reasons. One, because they are on a Turner station, and two, because they're competing with Vince McMahon. And
they're not competing with Vince McMahon.
Well, but a lot of wrestling fans think they are. That's my point. Is he is the first quote unquote viable alternative to WWE. Is there something you can say to sort of put a bow on this for us before we move on?
Tony, I wish you all the luck in the world. I really want your product to succeed. To the people that are huge fans of CM Punk and AEW, God bless you. I'm really, really happy that you have an alternative. If you've just not found WWE to be your cup of tea, and now you have an alternative, and you like the style of presentation that AEW is presenting, then I'm all for it. I watch it. Not religiously. I don't sit down and watch an entire episode every week, but I do drop in.
Man, I don't know. It just feels like if anybody's going to be pulling for Tony and AEW, who better than you? The guy who
I am. See, that's the part where I think
that's not conveyed on this show. I don't think you understand that the environment right now amongst wrestling fans online, buddy, it is so polarizing.
When a guy like CM Punk decides to come out and take a shot at me and my ego and the fact that I'm an old head. By the way, I haven't heard of that one before. By the way, he's 43 years old. It's kind of weird for a guy 43 years old calling someone that's in the ring performing old. He's certainly not on the cutting edge of the next generation of performers, but nor does he claim to be. So let me make that clear.
We had like a little bit of a Twitter war not too long ago with Eric Bischoff, where he, and I quote, he said that you were the biggest financial flop in wrestling
That's
history.
Fucking bullshit.
Hey.
I can tell there's only one person that can attest to that. I don't know what other people. I can only attest what's happened here and public record, and some of these things are a matter of public record because things of freedom of information and stuff. So we do, have over the years a good amount of financial data in pro wrestling. I can tell you, no one wrestler has ever come in and made a bigger plus delta financial difference in the history of my company going into, this is the 3rd year anniversary this week, going into year 4. No one person has ever made a more positive impact. We just did a record pay-per-view buy. Every pay-per-view, he's done a 4 pay-per-view cycle now. Every one of them was the record. Whether it was All Out, where he was a huge part of the draw with Darby, and his debut, of course, is a huge thing from the first dance. The biggest Rampage draw in the history of that show. The matches, he carried the Friday Night War, which, by the way, is a matter of record in fucking court in the state of California, that we won the Friday Night War. Just ask Jerry McDivitt, because he fucking wrote it. Hey. This guy won it versus Matt Sydal, who's a great wrestler. He had another goddamn great match on Friday night. This fucking guy, he fucking did the Friday Night War. He did the first dance. He's done the record Double or Nothing. He did the record All Out in his debut. He was a big part of a record Full Gear, a great match with Eddie Kingston, and he wrestled a bunch of young guys, a bunch of veterans in between there. Will Hobbs, Daniel Garcia, goddammit. And then he showed up, did the biggest program in terms of everything, TV, box ever with MJF. And then he did the goddamn main event here. He's the biggest part of financial success in the history of this company. Let's fucking go!
I will quasi-answer that. I didn't have a Twitter war with anybody. I never mentioned them by name, and I think people like that just need to die in the dark, and I don't need to speak their name and stuff like that. I'm focused on what we're doing and the positives we bring to the world. And
I don't want anybody to die, but nevertheless, it is bullshit what he said.
Yeah. We don't need to everybody's got a shitty opinion, so just let them have it.
That's a shitty opinion. It's the most bullshit opinion I've ever heard. And like I said, I hope the answer I gave backed up why he's the opposite. He's actually, for us, the biggest financial success story. And
okay, we're moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It works me up. Sorry.
I know.
Sorry.